Whitman Birthplace Association. And we are the friends group that operate this New York State Historic Site for New York. And we're waiting for our last family member and guest to arrive. And here we are. So this is terrific. I'd like to welcome you all to our annual event, the Long Island Poet of the Year. It's an award given out by the trustees and the association to a very talented poet. And I will let one of our trustees, who's introducing Matt in a few minutes, tell you about more about the award. But I would like to say a few words up here, if I may. Okay, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I welcome you, and I would like to introduce our two trustees that are in the audience today. Dr. Susan Fishbein, I'm going to stand and say hello. And Harriet Spitzer, you stand and wave your hands. I'd like to take a moment and comment on Whitman's legacy as a democracy poet. He's known as the poet of democracy. And he has written essays. He was an editor of a newspaper and very involved in the new birth of our country. He was born in 1819 in a house just behind you. And anyone who is here today who would like a tour, we offer a complimentary tour to go over and walk in Walt's footsteps, so to speak. And he was born here in 1819. And if you think about the establishment of our country in 1776, it was less than 50 years when Walt was born. So he was here and he had great hopes for us as a democracy. And if you watch the papers or watch the news, you hear him quoted all the time now for his comments about learning to get along, learning to be tolerant, and for the different races and classes, especially in his time, to work together. So I like to take a moment to comment on that. And as a result of that, we have a wonderful program called African American Voices of Democracy. And tune into our website. We have 5 or 6 wonderful programs about the Black voices that weren't heard when they should have been heard. And we are re-listening to them now to see what they have to say and contribute to democracy. Watch our website for our other programs also. We have innovative and fun. We have Girl Scout programs. We have family programs. We try and reach the whole gamut of ages here at the birthplace. So please come, volunteer, join as a member, join as another audience participant, and just come. We have picnic tables. You can come on a sunny day, read a book, write a poem, and have lunch. So our doors are always open, and thank you for coming today. I would like to thank our sponsors, New York State Parks, Suffolk County, and the town of Huntington. And I'd like to thank our members who are here today, our donors, our volunteers, and our supporters. I'd like to give a shout out to 2 of our younger technology people here today. Megan is on our staff. And Anthony is from Five Towns College and helping us out with technology. Thank you. And thank you to Barbara, who's out front, another one of our trustee staff members. She also gives tours, very knowledgeable about Whitman and about the association. So thank you, Barbara. Okay, it gives me great pleasure now to introduce our Vice President of Trustees, Dr. Susan Fishbein, and she will give a greeting and a welcome on behalf of the trustees to Matt. And after Susan speaks, we will have Terri come up and say a few words. So I'll come up in between, but let me introduce Susan Fishbein. Please come up.
If you can't already tell, Cynthia Shor is the spirit of this birthplace. We cannot do anything without her. Well, technical difficulties? Yes. Did I pull it too hard? And the height challenged of us also want to be heard. So can you hear me? All right. Okay. The Long Island Poet of the Year Award is presented annually by the Walt Whitman Birthplace Association to honor a notable and distinguished local poet who actively promotes poetry on Long Island. This year, Matt Pasca was nominated and selected as the 2022 WWBA Long Island Poet of the Year. Congratulations, Matt. Woo-hoo! Now, whether you know Matt or not, I'd like to take a few minutes to highlight Matt's achievements and acknowledge why he is so worthy of this honor. Matt's bio tells the story of a young boy who found creative expression in the language arts as a means of making sense of the world around him. Aspects of his family and home life and suburban upbringing on Long Island challenged his sensibilities. It was through poetry that he could reconcile the differences. Matt was never an underachiever. Earning a BA in English from Cornell University with a minor in Africana Studies, he also learned Russian along the way. His master's in secondary English education from Stony Brook paved the way for his stellar career in public education. The vast majority of high school English teachers do not become poets. I can attest to that. Matt walks the talk, both in the classroom and beyond its four walls. Matt's poetic achievements include a Pushcart Prize nomination for his first book-length collection entitled 1,000 Doors, and selection as a finalist for the Eric Hoffer Book Award for his second collection entitled Raven Wire. In addition to performances from New Mexico to Montana to Pennsylvania, Matt is well known at New York City venues and at Long Island colleges and universities, and here at the Walt Whitman Birthplace. In his hometown of Bay Shore, Matt serves as assistant poetry editor for Two Bridges Review and curates Second Saturdays at Cyrus, a vibrant poetry series. So what about his influence in his high school English classroom? Well, it is no small feat to be honored as a New York State Teacher of Excellence by the New York State English Council. The award requires selection by the candidate school with recommendations from students, parents, and colleagues. Matt's dedication to his students and to his craft are evident in his quarter-century career at Bay Shore High School, including advising their award-winning literary art magazine and curating a visiting writers program. In Matt's bio, he highlights, quote, art's ability to foster discovery, empathy, and justice, unquote. Matt Pasca embodies the qualities we seek in a Long Island Poet of the Year. We salute you and hope that you will continue to enrich the lives of all you touch with poetry. And now the heartbeat of the birthplace, Cynthia Shor.
Well, thank you, Susan. I have to give a shout out to Susan. She is a co-grant writer. When we have a grant that's due with the humanities, like Color Up, and we come in and we brainstorm and work together, and we've been pretty successful. So thank you very much. Applause for Susan. She keeps the programs working. Now, let me ask, are these pointed in the right direction? You're hearing everything okay. All right, now it's my pleasure to introduce our next person who's going to introduce Matt. He has two introductions today. And this very special person is Terri Muss. And I wrote to Matt yesterday, just yesterday, because I put her in the program as a teacher and a poet, which was my understanding, but I was sure she did more than that. So I wrote to Matt and I asked him, you know, what descriptions I should use. And okay. Okay, here it is. I lost my place for a moment. So he wrote back, Terri is my editor, my muse, my wife, my co-parent, adventure partner, and best friend. Wait for it, as they say on YouTube. Or he said you could just say author, actor, director, social worker, public speaker / genius, Terri Muss. Welcome, Terri.
Can I do this? Thank you. Well, thank you to everyone at the birthplace for honoring my husband. He's an incredible human being. When I was first asked to write something about Matt, I thought, well, who am I going to run this draft by? Because every first and last stop for all my writing drafts always go to Matt. So I didn't know how I was going to stand up here and talk about what his writing means to me without having his input to help me write it. But I'm going to do my best. Matt and I had the privilege to run a poetry workshop called the Sunday Grind for over 3 years. During that time, 20 to 30 people would cram in our den on couches or on cushions on the floor to workshop their pieces or do free writes. Many of those people are here today. We had a tradition that when somebody's work was so good, something that you wish you'd been able to write yourself but believed you never could, you would shout across the room at the reader after they had finished an impassioned but loving F you. I don't think I can remember a single free writing session where people didn't hurl that phrase at Matt, and always out of a combination of both of wonder and joy and anger that he seemingly had this ease with words and they just tumbled out of his pen and onto the page. I met Matt Pasca on a dating website almost 19 years ago. On those websites, at least back then, I'm very old, you get a certain amount of characters to describe who you are. Matt and I read tons of profiles before finding each other's. We connected over words then, and we're still connecting over them now. Matt often jokes that he doesn't understand how anyone finds anyone else on those dating websites when nobody understands the need to write specifically. He would say they use words like, I'm looking for someone nice and fun to describe themselves or who they're looking to meet. And he was sure that even serial killers think that they're nice and fun. Before we ever met in person or talked on the phone, we shared poems back and forth online. I'd be lying if I didn't say that his poems were one of the biggest things that made me want to meet him in person. From his specific and alluring profile online, which was very detailed, to the poem that he just drafted last night and shared with me in bed, his work has always made me stop and go, wow, wait a minute, read that again, wow. To many people, I seem like the outgoing one in the relationship, the one who makes plans or engages in conversations first. Most people think Matt is shy or standoffish or reserved when they meet him. And to some people who truly don't understand Matt, they may think of him as pretentious or judgmental because he doesn't speak very much. What most people don't understand is just how much Matt wants to say to you. Matt is overflowing with things that he wants to share, have you understand, questions he wants you to answer. His brain is filled with metaphors, images, baseball stats, geography, flags of the world, places he has gone, places he wants to go, ways he wants to change the world, puns he thinks you won't get or you will groan at. He wants to share his deepest fears, his longings, the way he's hoping we will all join together and fight the isms of this world. What his brain doesn't do is small talk, gossip, social answers to big questions, discussions about the weather, or who knows who. Matt writes so that he can say all the big things that need saying. He writes to show you the pictures his mind's camera has taken all day. He writes so he can better understand our complex, complicated, ruthless, and yet still beautiful worlds. But mostly he writes to better understand himself in the context of it all and to integrate himself into this spinning cosmos. And let me explain that. One of the things that trauma can do is dissociate us away from the world, separate us from ourselves and from others. So too can neurodivergence. Those superpowered and unique folks on the autism spectrum have the ability to pull the camera of their minds way back in order to see the world from a wide angle lens, while also being able to zoom in so deeply into the molecules of details that the rest of us so carelessly and easily miss. As Matt is both trauma survivor and superpowered neurodivergent, it is easy for him to watch the world from outside a window, taking snapshots of scenes, all while feeling outside of it all. This way of seeing brings us great poems, yes, but it can also bring Matt at times great loneliness. So when you read his poems, you are reading him. You are pulling him into your arms for a hug, dragging him into a conversation with you. When you read his poems, you take him on a trip with you, on a date, to a party. You are integrating him. Matt is someone who needs you to read his poems to fully know who he is. He doesn't write to become poetry famous, if there is such a thing, except for maybe Whitman, for money or prestige, or for even incredible awards like this one. He writes to be seen, to be made real, to be absorbed, to be understood, finally. I realize now that maybe this intro was meant to list his many accomplishments, but you've already handled those for me, so I'm glad, because he would just shift in his chair uncomfortably and groan. So I chose the only proper way to introduce Matt, to tell you this, all of you, this very important truth. There was a time before writing when Matt was alone, a solo camera snapping mental pictures with photographic dexterity of a world he felt he could not enter, and a time after he discovered writing, where he pushed his fingers into the keys of a Commodore 64 and also pushed himself into the arena of feeling seen, being connected, and being alive. And so he kept writing and writing. He writes, therefore he is, and the world is better for it. Matt, you and your family could not be more honored to live, grow, and work with you. We see you, all of you, always. So, beautiful human beings. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Matt Pasca, Walt Whitman Poet of the Year for 2022.
Sure. Yeah. Let's do it. Well,
Just make sure everybody can hear you.
yeah, I should be able to project. I'm not used to having a microphone in the classroom. So, my goodness. Well, thank you. This is a gorgeous room of people, by the way. You all look fantastic. I wanted to thank Susan for the lovely intro and Cynthia for overseeing all of this, and the whole Birthplace board for their support. To everyone who nominated me, thank you for doing that. You didn't have to. To the Long Island poetry community, the curators, the readers, the open micers, you do something very important in a place that desperately needs it. For everyone who's invited me to read and let me be seen, thank you. And to people at home and here, thank you for choosing to be here on your Saturday. I also want to thank people who've played a huge role in me being where I am now. And my mom is here, who's an awesome human being. My grandmother, Natalie, who passed many years ago, was always really, really interested in the power of language and the power of constantly learning, even until she was 94. My 11th grade English teacher, John Link, who asked to see my writing and made me a person in sharing that with him. All of my mentors, Muriel Weinstein, because who doesn't want to be Muriel Weinstein when they grow up? May she rest in power. And my colleagues and students and former students and my redheaded children at the back, who you can speak to later. And my unbelievably incredible wife, who just in her speech told you all the things I've been trying to say in my poetry, so I don't think I need to now. She nailed it. So if you have somewhere to be, that was the nonfiction version. I am typically very uncomfortable with being the center of attention. As a teacher, I don't feel that way. I'm part of the classroom, but I don't feel like I am the person they're really there for. But this is a 40-minute reading, I've been told, and that's the class period that I'm used to. And I typically don't talk the whole period, but I guess this will be a special exception to that. Because I need a lesson plan, I've broken this into 3 parts. Each will have 5 poems. There is no assignment other than to hopefully listen. And I would love any questions at the end that you might have. And there's a couple of books at the back. Most of what I'm reading today, about 90%, is from a 3rd book that I've been working on for a while, that life has not allowed me to get as far on as I'd like to in terms of the revision process. But it's mostly new stuff that perhaps you haven't heard. So the first part is really about writing my way out of that kind of mute detachment that I did feel, and using Lin-Manuel Miranda's line there, writing your way out. That really is the power of writing. And when I see people writing, it makes me incredibly happy because something good is happening. So just a very brief, I kind of come from a collision of 3 spheres of influence. The first is Long Island. I'll get to that in a second. The second is family. The third is being raised in a Baha'i environment. So my parents, biological parents, both joined the Baha'i faith in 1967, and it's a world religion that is very motivated to eliminate all forms of prejudice, particularly race. So from the time I was a really teeny kid, I was around people from all over the world, speaking different languages, eating different food, singing and praying and talking in different languages. And I was like, hey, that's what life is like. And then I went to school. And it was entirely Italian Catholic. And there were days when I was the only one in the classroom because they'd all left to go to religion class. And I just didn't know what was happening until at least 13 about anything. And then in my own family, there was illness, there was dysfunction, there was fighting. And I kind of was the youngest and just really had no way out of my head and didn't understand how my brain worked either. It was doing lots of things that I was trying to make sense of. So in terms of that unique kind of grouping of circles, I didn't really have a peer group. I still don't necessarily have a peer group of people who share a background with a parent with terminal illness, being raised a Baha'i in a suburb, and having neurodivergent artistic leanings. I'm trying to find some of those people if you run into them, but yeah, so it's an odd road. So the first poem I'm going to read comes out of a rejection letter that I got from the Pittsburgh Journal of Poetry. So in terms of, like I said, talking about race is something I've been around since I was 3, and very early on understood the difference between being perceived white and claiming whiteness. And I knew that by 7, 8 years old. I was already thinking about that. I know here we are like 40, 50 years later, whatever. And so it's very strange to look the way I do and always be in a room thinking about, I'm always thinking about race. I was raised to do that. So this is the part of the rejection letter I got. Ultimately, we felt that these poems addressed important themes, but in placing themselves almost outside a white perspective in order to critique it, lack a certain level of vulnerability and self-accountability on the part of the speaker. We recognize that this can be a difficult balance to strike. Pittsburgh Journal of Poetry. There's a poem called Disclaimer. The transitive property persists. If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. If you, then me. And yet beyond nicheless reference, I dissolve on the hook as hierarchies groove sinister beats into vinyl. I'd have unpeeled by now, yanked the apple from my neck, left no box for privilege to check if I could have. Why I couldn't write this poem, why I chased sunset with Black colleagues on beach chairs. Sometimes treason isn't enough. Sometimes treason isn't even treason. In the Matrix, no tongue for this grade skipping neurodivergent from a Radley house with strange holidays. No SEAL team of Baha'i boys steeped in saffron and surrender. Whiteness is a stray dog always at my door. Maleness too, and though I chase them off, they beg for food or for me to put on a suit already and pluck the air from every room like a peach. If I could, I'd crackle flame from the hearth of white epiphany, but was taught before shoelace and subtraction how that goes, to stalk its every move. For this, Matt Pasca wants no medal or cookie, won't virtue signal like a proud lighthouse. Matt Pasca both is and is not accountable, the page ever white before my typed denial. Matt Pasca is not defensive when the Pittsburgh Journal of Poetry spots him outside the ring of whiteness, but admits in the between he is platypus. Alone so often he forgets sometimes to speak. All right, this is a follow-up to Terri's intro. I don't know how to talk to people. Or I do, but can't prioritize a pit stop of thrushes, Zimbabwe's fuel hike, or Cadillac Mountain aglow in my granite memory. Nothing here is small, only the me inside that knows like moontide I exist. When you say hello, stories spin like slot machine fruit, a broken wing, coffee grounds, the email to my son's teacher, a fraudulent debit charge, my palm against the cool codex of door handle. And tomorrow you'll offer again, ask how I am, pull the lever, implicit bias, Kukulkan, playground slides, toner stains, Estefani hoping her mother returns from El Salvador, a speedboat slapping Caribbean shallows where the Cunillala overthrew Panama, Orville Wright at ocean's edge with only a camera and a mandolin. Are you still there? On day 3, I am certain to answer, only I don't. Stuck in the slots, my gypsy mother, the Nepalese flag. I'd never speak to people I was crushing hard on, Ithacan air after blizzards, my son's questions warm in my ears, airport escalators, meerkats, the thrill of being wrong, cutting an umbilical cord on our den floor. My wife's cistern soul, our caramel hearts round as bird nests, the vault of our loving, the red shift of our late night bed, another failure, another colleague left to wonder. Just say you're fine and ask how they are, I've been told. It may be I don't want to know how to respond, want instead to grab your arm and say against the hollow fluorescence of high school lockers that no day should slip past without a receipt, that we must catch these minutes line by line. So when, stilled by years and airlessness, we are brought to the ground's green embrace, it will take us back, no questions asked. Thank you. There's a lot of people in the room who are writers, and I always tell my students, half of being a writer obviously is the craft, the other half is how you see the world, and practicing seeing as a writer is something that perhaps I will be speaking to here. This is called Orange Zero. Some people are unmoved by amaryllis petals. shriveling under rows of chain-link diamonds, or swimsuit racks streaked with rust and sawdust at the back of Sears, their ears unpinned to power lines raving with amphibious chatter. I study it all, like ultraviolet light in a lizard cage, wondering what intestine of syllables will uncoil me. Drive to work with Venus and a waning gibbous over violet groves, slowed by my stare, then peripherally sped into smear. Some people hear a song without dislodging into bass notes dropped like bombs in sepia documentaries, or crows flapping like black-winged heartbeats across staff paper sky. Maybe everyone is a hangman's hood falling to the sound of automated bells, or yak-fat mantras chanted over quivering bowls and snowy cutouts of quantum bones we sometimes were. Like a zero is both circular and infinite, Ouroboros eating its tail, or a poem, or atoms shared with Mars. In math, X is sometimes followed by X prime, and sometimes in a shower stall of coursing soap and blind exfoliation, I am neither. Only husk, occupant of anything. Even the steam, or glass knob, forged in a primal furnace, an orange zero glowing in the dowel-struck dark. Thank you. So the book I'm working on is called Traitor, and I think it's obviously there are instances where betrayal is not good, but I think there are so many where it is. There are so many things that are prescribed to us, so many labels, so many misunderstandings, and things we're born into that we really critically should consider betraying. You know, I think most people have a complicated history with family. I'm blessed with an awesome mom and some other people, but feeling like you can also find chosen family is really important, and understanding what it means to kind of liberate yourself from whatever clannishness and cultishness gets built into family and nation and all kinds of things like that. So, okay. Got some holidays there. Okay. So this is called Expatria, which I think roughly means from the fatherland, or out of the fatherland. Blood may be thicker, but water is no fortress or battle line. It is voyager, cartographer, architect. I woke among passenger seat psychics and shifting dunes, lipstick cheeks and cicada shells clinging to bark patina. The women cooked and cleaned for men who crowned themselves with opinions. I fissured into regions but remained Yugoslavia in minus sign eyes. My parents said a Ouija board told them to bring 273 followers into an ark. My father said the cracked couplet of his model train car was whole the next morning. My brother said his history teacher seduced him on her boat and that he was addicted to cocaine, then said he wasn't. My father said Black people have an extra muscle that makes them faster. My mother became his nurse and chamber pot. My brother said he broke a bottle over someone's head and tossed a pumpkin from a moving car, smashed that biker like a bomb. My mother watched the world flap into twilight like a moonlit murder. It is also true she took me to Shea Stadium for my 11th birthday, that my brother cooked risottos while dad was hospitalized, and mom worked 3 jobs, and that dad sometimes let me quiz him for hours about rivers. Flowers still grow in Chernobyl. Blood is an unreliable narrator calling to itself like a church bell. Blood says, I love you. I say you don't know how, and we are both wrong. Above the gaslight banter and decay, above the rusty gears and mousetrap magic, gang signs and buried fears, grave as unexploded ordnance, I've reclaimed this air, made myself orphan, thumbed Acropolis stone in lacquered door frames, sipped water near feral cats and funneled herbs, shaken the last shards of amber from my skin. My children will have to choose me too. Blood circulates and tries never to escape. Water goes and knows everything must change. Like that one, so. This is also about extricating from family, but also finding forgiveness and connection. It's called Inshallah. As I paced the alleys of Maghreb Medinas, swapped joy with Cairene cabbies and hugged Turkish waiters over tea, Inshallah festooned like crates of dates and cumin, Arabic for God willing, as in take nothing for granted, as in every moment is shorthand for love. The word snapped me into place among calico cats and Mamluk minarets, pulled me back to Grandpa Murray, saying God willing at every goodbye, even his last. As a boy, I thought him fatalistic, a bristle-chinned Jew afraid of dying. But when nations held my arm and nodded, Inshallah, my grandfather returned to me, Semitic and wise, the son of an immigrant who found work as a house painter, little Murray in Harlem in an ink factory, promoted to manager, loaned money and land for assimilation, his otherness bleached by Long Island sun. I remember the plastic oranges and pinochle dinge of his house on Brent Drive, where I froze on biannual weekends amid 50s decor and a 60s lawnmower haze, Grandpa Murray snapping out the paper, eyeballing trifectas and lolling to transistor static, Saturdays for saddles, never Sabbath. Grandma Toby lumbering in blue capri and Avon slippers, riding the coupon high, God willing, of mesh-curtained Sundays in suburbia, while I sank into lifeless rooms of black-faced dolls and carved soaps, hoping to connect, find myself, inshallah, between broadcast golf, bowling trophies, and varicose shins scraped white by polyester. At night, after depression-informed rations of food, Grandma tisked with delight at the television. Those coloreds are just so talented. As if a people could be reduced to synecdoche, metonymous ribbons of legs dancing for the whole. I prayed I could leave, longed for some foreign place inside, God willing, or across the world where I could be anyone's son. I see now how the traitor in me judged the one in him. There is more to any story than we know. Perhaps he and I, maybe all of us, can forgive each other someday. Inshallah. On to part two. So Walt Whitman, I was thinking about what always struck me about Walt's work was the celebration of the underappreciated, the celebration of people who get no attention and who have no voice. And so I have an incredible privilege to be here and to have people listening and to have a platform. And I try to use that as much as I can, no matter how uncomfortable it is for me to speak with people in my classroom and elsewhere. And so most of this, big chunk of this book definitely deals with trying to break down many of the systems that we are brainwashed with. So I want to start with a quote by Noel Ignatiev, a sociologist, who said, "Treason to whiteness is loyalty to humanity." I like the quote too. This is called carbon monoxide. Because this poison has no smell or hue, I snap the 9-volt in, set the red to blinking. They say it spreads so quietly, most never question the air, accept blindly, celebrate even the rigged invisible. I have strolled in gift-wrapped thought through back roads and banks, retrieved keys from neighbors' mats unbothered. When I had neither money nor peace, I sent this body out in a tie and was default setting. Struggle times 0 is 0. This is not about multiplication. While pumping gas, I fixate on digitized dino dollars and drink in the moon. Certain epithets won't ring from passing windows. Story 1. A parent calls about my not standing for the pledge. My principal casually asks by the lockers if it's true, and I say yes. He nods and walks away. Story 2. After Eric Garner's murder, the only Black male teacher in our building wears an I can't breathe shirt to school. Complaints flood district office. Our union goes silent. He is summoned to HR. Comfort is a house without clocks. This brain not crow's nest, but island, not scanner, but flower bed, not refugee, but cherry lips mouthing whenever you want. Why even ask? Like silver Halloween bowls flush with 100 grands. This body with a toy gun, a broken taillight, a white wife, a leaf blower, with running shoes, a pre-dawn pillow, a mortgage, or two hands raised above its shoulders is no target in the devil's crosshairs. Some days I trace my outline with sticks of TNT, set the timer and wait for the force field to blow. Only it bellows back with lawn jockeys and wallet gorged enslavers, with Mr. Softy plantation jingles and nepotistic ass savers, with Brock Turner futures worth more than Trayvon pasts, with its Rushmore 4 and Santa Maria masts, its sock hop nostalgia and stacked court psychosis, its Cayman loophole corporate symbiosis, its libraries and clinics nowhere near those who need them, its crops never sold to the workers who seed them. May this 9-volt mark a new vigilance, a Tubman search warrant for the stars. It is time to decolonize every room, expose the air for what it is. My 16-year-old like that, which is impressive because he's a better, oh, good. Oh, good, I'm glad. They're better artists than I could imagine being, these two over here. This next poem is a collision of bronchitis, our history of racism, and the end of the school year. It's like I just like pressed a button, a random button, randomized. Coughing up the flag. It had been a week of hacking, chest a nest of pinballs, eyes pink and tear-rimmed when 30 feet up the South Carolina State House flagpole, Breen Newsom raised the stars and bars like a busted Horcrux over Pendleton Street. A black spider woman freeing the stupefied air as if her ancestors and Charleston's fallen congregants would draw breath again. As if the officers below, mere hours after buying Burger King for a murderer, were not about to arrest her. I wanted to sing along, wanted to cheer, but thought instead of little Bryson, sniffing marigolds, saying streetlights mean mutant ninja turtles with bandanas and swords bring vitamins at bedtime. Bryson all 3-year-old lashes, pupil wild pencil grip and swim class floaties. Someday eyes red with bias and white with benefit will expunge his interior. The Captain America shield on his wall, naps on dad's chest and road trip car seat will swap his body for criminal. Someday they will find his placid skin where they can fear it. Marshaled thugs standing their ground under streetlights where no Raphael or Leonardo can save Bryson's beauty from a heart's worst mutation. Weeks later and again, drowsy and rib sore, 1,000 hands circled Newsom's flagpole in a halo of righteous reckoning. The palmetto noon drenched with song and purged of another X, another red, white, and blue node heaved from this endless convulsion. This is not the end of peristalsis. It is more like sobbing, like caged oxygen, a nation doubled over some glory it has never known. Thank you very much. We travel a lot. It's kind of our family religion. The public relations for the rest of the world in the United States is very poor. Most people I know, the Caribbean and Disney are pretty much the two locations you're allowed to go to, right? Very few places have a more erroneous reputation here than Mexico. Mexico is an incredible, incredible place. It's a place people from all over the world go to. And most Americans have been taught to fear or malign. We've been 3 times, and it is such a tremendously complex, delicious, gorgeous country. And so I imagined a poem from Mexico's point of view, like you do, I guess. What Mexico said to the USA. Our days are Quetzal gemstone, flamingo photon sonatas of soil. The avocado trees mutter peace and coffee. Nubs whirl into pails under cumulus shading weeds between zocalos where we replant the human heart. To you, we are cartel peligroso y sucios. To us, you are bankrupt, sneering at our drum-blown chili dust, our smoke-burned Guadalupe fiestas. Your marble museos omit us, but never your Taco Tuesday Cinco de Sombrero cash flow. We learned centuries ago to run from your death tick. Chalk's lightning acts through Mayan air. We look up, wonder when you'll take more of our sky. How you took Arizona, Utah, Nevada, California, Texas, and New Mexico, crossing every border we owned. In your country, airbrushed breasts stagger and tempt, eyes wield daggers and mouths lament black-haired senoras in market aisles shouting, "Vámonos." In your country, wealth is sainthood and poverty sin. White fabrications gushing from every schoolhouse piñata. A land where every week children are shot and no one does a thing. We'll do one more in this section. I wanted to also thinking about Walt and thinking about my sons. Being a teacher, the only thing I get into very few verbal arguments with people because I'm a writer. I don't like to speak. But when people talk about the young generations as if they know about them, I have to get in their face. The young people now are the most open-minded, deeply understanding, widely informed people on the planet. Okay. And so many of these very, very narrow lanes that people have lived in for so long, they have no respect for, and rightly so. And so this is for Walt, who couldn't always live his full life around people. This is for Freddie Mercury, who is in the poem, and the addressee of the poem, and for my son. The champion. A silk banner sways from my heart's rafter, Freddie, embroidered with your fist. Thrust skyward for those whose only sin is uncontrived jubilance. Native birdsong bare as alpine sun. My son dons your Halloween mustache, and crime too. At the lunch table, geometry desk, and center stage, where he belts your words in triumph. When they call humanity's greatest anthem perverse, how loud must one live to crack the silence of empty rooms? You shouldn't have had to fight till the end. Not the tabloids or homophobes, not your body itself, after loneliness took everything it had. We took everything you had. This is no time for losers, Freddie. No time for the bereft who still kick sand in the face of love's peerless prophets. My gentle boy, it is his time, and hers, and theirs, and yours, always yours. Yeah, I know. I was just thinking my water's over, and there it was. I wonder if we could send our shared brain out into the world and stay home one day. We should work on that. Speaking of brains, okay, so third section, you know, people like to talk about how everyone's divided. I don't know that that's true. I think in my experience, there are people who want to uncritically fly a flag for whatever it is they've been taught is great. And then there's people who want to critically take apart everything and figure out what it is and try to grow from it. And one is lazy, but you feel like you're always right. And one is really, really difficult and takes a lot of work, but you feel like being human is really interesting. That's how I see it. And so the great reward of working really, really, really hard every single day to be reflective and critical is that you have really authentic, just glorious relationships like the one I have with my wife and my kids and the people in my life. And so the reward is tremendous and the work is always worth it. So this is a poem inspired by my son, and also a poem by Josh Bennett, who's one of the best poets in the United States. He's got a third book coming out in September. Dr. Joshua Bennett, look him up. One of his old poems was called 16 Bars for Kendrick Lamar. And I was working with my students in class and just kind of writing something down. And then I found my notebook 5 years later and I was like, oh, I could use this. So I worked on this. So my son's brain is a bit similar. And there was a period of time when really his brain was 98% Eminem lyrics, which is a lot, right? You need to have a lot of room for Eminem lyrics. He's used more words than any other artist known to mankind. They did a study, right? And so I am not a rapper, but so it was odd that I wrote this in this way, but I'll do my best. 10 bars for Eminem. 1, your raps are vociferous, spit so splendiferous, carnivorous. This river is a Michigan matador's 8-mile cape of metaphors, raised to incite us to fight and invite us to light what inside us our fear makes us hide from. 2, my son's brain is speed gear, word bullet, tongue loose fire. When he first heard you, his rims found tires. 3, irony this and irony that. Damn, the fools can't parse your act from your voice. See, I'm a teacher and preacher that authors and speakers ain't the same. That a narrator game ain't just self-reflection, but slim and shady deflections, pushing satirical buttons, gluttons for any attention. 4, thank you for going public about your Asperger's. It built highways for my son. 5, he spent 11 days on Guatemalan lanchas, pyramids, volcanoes, and Mayan jungle trails, memorizing the fast part of Rap God. 6, to him you are. 7, had you been my son, I'd have stayed and field the questions streaming through your mouth's transom like untranslated wind. Watched you tame leaves, the flight patterns of starlings, cling to wakefulness and syllables like one shipwrecked in oceans of infinite code. Watch the parabola of your senses leap from its axis, ascend towards anything cracked open and dripping why. 8, Marshall Mathers on the couch trying to matter with patter and ink, not to sink into clatter with memory and tatters on the brink. Blink, it shattered, left exposed in a crime, hard to think without flattery, charging time's battery with rhyme. 9, were your 11-year-old middle school gym class organs also jelly framed by steel and masculine clipboard psychosis? Can I offer you even now a rib cage of morning sun, a steamroll of ions at low tide, the god of this love pressing your knuckles to the shore? 10, when my son ciphers his way through absent increments of time, holds his little brother's hand, hugs the waiter who serves him pizza, and begins every day bright and clean and full of unironic hope despite the snail-bashing world closing in. When my son really stands up, when he stands up, when he stands up, I thank you. Well, I know you. I had no choice but to read that today because. This is one from Ravenwire. I wrote it in this room during a workshop with Naomi Shihab Nye, who's just about the best person, just period. If you ever get to meet her or see her or work with her, you're just kind of like, what would Naomi do? It's that level. Anyway, her workshops are frantic. And somehow I managed to put together the notes for this that turned into the poem. It's called June 1st, which in our family is really important. It was June 1st, 2003 was our first date. And June 1st is also Terri's sobriety date, I think 26 years ago. And so the poem is really about, despite those landmarks, all the other things that happen ordinarily on a June 1st. Our baby is almost 5. He eats olives, knows the difference between ride, crash, and hi-hat cymbals, and says things like, "Daddy, imagine we're on a chessboard and I am a pawn and you are the knight." He likes spotting leaves at the bottom of our uncovered pool, its murky depth slowly morphing to emerald. He bends close and points, a single orange hair against the screaming rhododendron blossoms, their high C pressing down on us like a hand. It is 10 years to the day I first met his mother. I was on crutches in the rain. We ordered fruit salad in a city cafe and talked for 8 hours. It is still that way, only more. A decade of ladders climbed to overlooks of joy, wider vistas to come. Today she asked for half a tomato in a bag, and as I opened the refrigerator, we sang, "Half a tomato in a bag." At the same moment, exact key and rhythm, unplanned. My oldest is inside the house reading. The goldfinches flutter upside down on the feeder. The dogwood petals have fallen, and the 10 o'clock heat wisps across my face like a mustache. A solitary plane pricks the skin of lazuli sky. In the pool, leaves rise from the friction, float into my net. My son's eyes widen, and he asks if I will hold him upside down and play him like a bass. At night, he and his brother breathe down the hall, sleep to a recording of ocean waves. My wife and I hold hands atop the sheets, windows open, the legs of crickets rubbing through the room. I'll do another love poem. Long Island is very much known for being kind of a wedding factory. Speaking of like brainwashing, right? I ain't hating on it if you had a big wedding, you do you. But it is kind of an industry here. And my students are shocked to learn you don't need to spend much money on a wedding if you choose not to. They're just kind of like, what? And that also, if your wedding day is the best day of your life, that doesn't speak well for the rest of your life, okay? Which has never made sense to me, right? So, this is kind of a manual about the work of the marriage. How to newlywed forever. When she doesn't text you back, assume her battery died, that she is offering someone a shoulder, a mantra, a pair of shoes. When she doesn't want to cancel plans, but is a hollow twinging nerve, cancel them for her. Put on tea, bring her dark chocolate, Cheetos. Ask what you can do. If she answers, listen. When she mixes apple cider vinegar and juice for encroaching ills, thank her. When she snips the boys' nails as they tantrum, thank her. When she bangs out a gourmet meal at midnight in her underwear, licking chili sauce from a spoon, thank her. Eat, even if you're full. When someone calls her your ball and chain, set them straight. Tell them she is the view that makes every climb worth it. Hold her hand like your palm is made of fern, your feet willow roots, your heartbeat a monkey howling through calabash night. Master the dishes, dot calendars with diamonds, lock eyes under turreted moonlight. When they say you are codependent, adjust their prefix to inter. Show them the pothole you used to fit inside, the sweeping sky that holds you now. To really do this right, you must make peace with impermanence. Only in death's eventual light does every dusk feel like victory. When she holds your face between her hands and says you are not broken, that you are the kind of unbroken she has always needed. Believe her, always believe her. Do I have time for a couple more? All right, I'll do 3 more. Shout out to Wayne, science teacher. I always tell my students, because I attract a lot of people who don't like math and science. As a writer and as an English teacher and as someone who works with a lot of students who like to write, they complain about it. I tell them that's where all the great metaphors are. So So even if you don't hand in your homework, pay attention, right? That's what math and science has all the great metaphors, correct? Because nature tells us everything we need to know, right? If we listen. So I learned that there's a very special kind of rain, and it's the name of this poem, and it just blew my mind. It's called Virga. There is a kind of rain that never hits the ground, never collects in fat pools to reveal your flaws, wriggling like worms. The ex-wife, misplaced money, lost friendships, strung like shark teeth on a thread. Do not confuse this rain with the kind pelting the hosta patch, deck chairs and bike chains, the one leaking through ceilings onto splash cymbals my 12-year-old summons like a sorcerer. If I were to die, rain might or might not exist. The hostas, azaleas, plastic pails, my drummer son. I would no longer be woven into rain's measures like a fermata or coda, and maybe no eye would be mirrored in water, only branches and nude grapevines shimmering in ribbed twilight, wordless, free of mistakes. Sometimes the post-storm moonlight shatters my pupils, and my wife and words are all I have. Long ago, every feeling demanded alms, but time makes little sense now. The seasons spin like a top, and I stand in the road, a heretic of presence, sniffing the sulfur of struck stone, licking salt from her mouth and typing another verse to be read when I am gone. Virga is a kind of rain that evaporates before hitting the ground, and really, isn't that all this ever is? When I start the timer, pull back the raspy hook, fishing line of withered want, club floor cleared of assumption, polish my grain, cue the piccolos, wipe the dross from this bloody glass, all the daubing of prepackaged noise, lower my tears, coax them into basins crimped with drought, release their determined lunacy. Now find the X in the sand, dig for love. Pierce, plunge, unroot, there is no shortage of shovels. We can sit on surf's edge, compare wounds, praise their grooves, let salt unfetter children our fallen world's envy. There is no application fee to be radically naive. Jungle light floods abandoned webs and moistened peonies, flashbacks of raspados and baklava, cathedrals capped with gold. Garland this chest with flowers. I will die, I promise, loving more than anyone thought possible. I will end with some more instructions. And thank you all for listening so intently. You're an amazing audience. It does feel weird being so high above you. Like turned in your hymn note page. But thank you. And yeah, and I hope I get to say hi to everyone and enjoy the rest of the day. Instructions on not killing, which I think perhaps many of you need, or thinking about it. Instructions on not killing, an affirmation. Question, fill the tank at BP and fund billionaires who blackened the Gulf, or choose Citgo and flush the coffers of Rosneft and 10 Venezuelans who decide whether or not all other Venezuelans eat and make rent. Breathe. There are 7.8 billion people here and nearly all of them believe in dessert. Don't take the bait. Read Baldwin, chop dill, sing harmony to Purple Rain on a bridge at sunset. Do not engage with those for whom certainty pools like oil under a nut butter lid. Seek pleasure. Remember, your needs must be met before protesting willful ignorance and hyper-capitalist fascism. Enumerate your room's occupants. Who is aglow with privilege and who is unseen, unsafe? Enumerate the cost of citizenship, wallet, and psyche. Call out institutionalized algorithms of perpetual oppression. Remember, you aren't here to be liked, martyred, or absolved. Hug your children. Stick your nose in a cat's fur. Eat mofongo. Expose the rank history the rich and ruling everywhere stuff into confetti cannons to blow over Independence Day celebrations. Pray, and by that I mean shut up. What does the goddess whisper? What of the wolf mother's Yellowstone howl? Sniff grass cuttings, squeeze icicles on a beach made of volcanic sand. Recall the shimmer of Saharan dunes, soft as powdered gold. How many friends can be made over tortillas and habichuelas? Don't take hatred personally, even when it is. This too shall pass. We too shall pass. Do what you can now while you are human. Thank you very much. Oh my goodness.
Well, thank you. My goodness, my goodness. Certainly echoes of Whitman and everything that you're reading and writing yourself. I can hear Whitman say, get rid of all the books, throw out the books and question everything you've been taught. So we have a good legacy for Walt here. And Matt. We do have a plaque we'd like to give you, and also we'd like to have some audience comments and participation. So why don't we do that first? You left the stage too fast. I was going to ask you to stay here. And also please introduce your sons and friends here. You've referred to them quite a few times. Yes, come on up. And they're way in the back, and I've heard good things about them. So why don't you introduce your special friends who are here today, and we'll have some comments and responses, and then we'll give Matt his plaque. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, well, Rainer's 16. Yes, you're killing it. And Atticus is 13. They're just really tall. And our daughter of our heart, Sadeja, just turned 26 and drove in from Jersey to be with us, part of our family with Dahle, her husband, and just all kinds of, I can't introduce all of you, but you're lovely. Yeah, so questions, comments?
Why don't you take over and raise your hand and
You in the back. No, I was. Kenny. Thank you. Thank you. He said, blood is an unreliable narrator. Great line. Thank you, Kenny. Yes, Sue.
Can you tell us about your process? How put yourself into a writing mode, or does it come to you? How does that work for you? How do you practice your craft?
And this you'll have to refer to Terry's introduction. I've never had writer's block. I've had speaker's block for years on end. Unfortunately, that's more socially acceptable than just writing on pads and giving them to people. No, I guess it's just sheer volume of that connection. It used to be when I was younger, I needed a certain space and environment and time of day to be able to sit down and write. And I think I realized as life got more full and I had children, and like, if I don't figure out how to just turn this on and off, I'm not going to write anymore. And so it's to the point now where I can literally count to 10 and be completely in just, it's a way of just like, completely throwing out the narrative in your mind at the time, which for me isn't very loud. I'm still very much a camera. So that I'm thankful for in terms of it. So I think for a lot of people, they have a lot to quiet before they can slip into a writing space. And for me, I'm not. When Terry and I were first dating, she was so confused because there were times when she'd ask me what I was thinking, and I'd say, I'm not. She's like, that's impossible. I'm like, I am present, as the Buddha taught me. I am in the moment. I'm here. I'm listening. And so I think, there's lots of things I'm not good at, but I am very good at just going right in. So I fill up notebooks and notebooks and notebooks. And then for like 3 or 4 weeks in July/August, I look through them and see what I have. Obviously, that kind of schedule doesn't leave me much time. So that's why it's taking so long to put this book together. Yeah, sure. Maggie. Thank you, Maggie. Well, right back at you. Right back at you. Thank you, Maggie. So, Deja, I love you a lot.
Religion is always both. I have no connection to God as a man or figure, but when I'm silent and I'm in nature, I get in such awe of the fact that grass can grow green and there's some birds and that giraffes have such long necks.
They sure do.
I find that I thanking something somewhere for it.
Yeah.
And the fact that it playing to silence means so much to me because sometimes I'm not connecting to God in a way that everyone says I should.
Yeah.
And that everyone else does. And everybody just parades around. And I judge myself for that. I find such comfort in your line of that. That's how I do it.
Yeah.
Is just appreciating everything and how different all the different things that can possibly be there and something that can possibly create them. And I want to say thank you because
Thank you. Thank you. And Buddha's ears are always depicted really, really long, particularly in Thai and Vietnamese depictions of Buddha for that reason, that we're supposed to be listening. That prayer is a listening. It's not, we think of it as, okay, what am I saying? It's really, what am I listening to? Megan. Hey, Zoomers. Thank you, Maria, one of my students. I feel relieved now, but really if everyone could have an audience like this, they'd always be happy. This is a tremendous group of people. And I've learned in 25 years of teaching to look a little bit above the crowd. The crowd doesn't know you're not looking at them. So that's a little trick, but when you're nervous, but then you bring the eye level down. But I feel really blessed and grateful and connected, which for me is not easy. Susan and then Bree. Oh yeah, you had 2 questions.
really grateful that you do it. Sure. Writing about that a lot. And feel like writing a liner of else's that doesn't have all this context can somewhat inauthentic. And I just want to thank you because of the way present and personal friends of ours who are Black kids who are here, you know, your work resonates.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Yeah. Got to start somewhere. Yeah. Other Zoom question. Aw. It gave me more time to do some revision work. You know, I think the poem of my family was the thing I attended to the most during quarantine. We got a chance to spend time together that we didn't think we were going to get. You know, when you have at the time like a 14 and a 12-year-old, you think, well, the days of really spending a lot of quality time together are over, and things are just moving really, really fast. And the pandemic for us, we were blessed, was a pause button to stay inside and enjoy each other's company, and watch movies and eat food. And I did get to really get some momentum going. A lot of the poems that I read today wouldn't be in the shape they're in without the pandemic. So, you know, I think, yeah, in that regard, it was positive. So, Bree. Well, I've read it so many times, so I didn't read it today, but I have a love poem for Terri called No New Water. And the notion that all the water that's on the planet is all the water there's ever been, and we're not getting more, and it just keeps recycling. That always struck me because I think that this notion that people have that childhood is a time of innocence and carefree irresponsibility, I think for a lot of people does not resonate. And I think what makes people even more anxious and depressed as they enter adolescence is this notion that if they haven't had it by now, it's not going to happen. And what they don't tell you is that you can become a kid when you're 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. And that innocence and love and playfulness is a renewable resource. And so that metaphor of that, you know, water evaporates and then it comes back down and it evaporates and it comes back down, and Wayne can explain it better, but deeply simplified. But yeah, the water cycle is for me very, very powerful, very profound metaphor that when we feel like things have been lost, they're not necessarily, right? You can get a childhood when you're 80, you know. Oh, and that rats are cartilaginous. Yeah. They're made of cartilage. They can fit into anything. They're like noses with like legs. Yeah. It's the adjectival form of cartilage. So yeah. I'm glad. This is my whole classroom discipline plan, is they never know what I'm going to say. Yes, Megan, who do we have? Sure. I never doubted what was happening between me and a notebook. I never doubted my ability to write. I think for reasons that Susan kind of alluded to, I've doubted. I think when you haven't seen, and this is why representation is so deeply important across all demographics, when you don't see someone do something, of course you doubt it. Like I remember having a lengthy conversation with one of my racism professors in college in the Africana Studies program. you know, and it's not his problem. Like, I'm like, where is the community for someone like me? Like, where is the community for people who want to deconstruct and reconstruct? You know, there were times when I like wished that I was, you know, on the LGBTQ plus spectrum. Like, I wanted a community that wasn't a white straight dude who was athletic and 6 foot and well educated and well spoken, because most people who fit my description don't want to talk to me. Or they do, and when I talk, they don't want to talk to me. So, and then with the history that I have, so it can be very isolating. So I often doubt my voice. I still do it all the time. That's kind of what the I don't know how to talk to people poem is about. But not in writing. Yes.
This is not a question. But no, I also show that we're inspired. Walt Whitman born, right? So when we come here, we get a certain feel, safety. And I have to say, I still find here, I don't know in my person who embodies the spirit of Walt Whitman as much.
He was a teacher here on Long Island, so I picked that up also. So I was trying to walk in the footsteps. Well, thank you. That was beautiful words.
So.
Thank
Harriet
you.
Spitzer.
My mom's name is Harriet. So
Oh,
wow.
how wonderful.
yes.
Okay, Susan, as Vice President, would you like to do the honors?
Yes. Okay, it says it right here. It's official. Matt Pasca is the 2022 Long Island Poet of the Year.
We also have a small honorarium, and so this is for you. It
Thank
comes with
you.
it, and boys, you don't get anything. Don't ask for new sneakers. It's all for Dad.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And Anthony, let us stand down here and take another picture. Harriet, if you would go down.